Seems fair to me.
Live from the Sheldon Concert Hall in Grand Center, this is Donnybash.
Edition of Donnybash. This is our live fundraiser. We're coming to you live on 9 PBS from the beautiful and acoustically perfect Sheldon Concert Hall in Grand Center, St. Louis, Missouri. We've got a lot of things to talk about, but first let's meet our panelists, starting with, she's from the Big 550 KTRS. She co-hosts the show with Jennifer Blome, Wendy Wiese, ladies and gentlemen. One of our founders from STLtoday.com and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Bill McClellan. From the Riverfront Times, where she's executive editor of that publication and its sister papers, Sarah Fenske. And from the St. Louis American, where he writes a great column and edits the news, ladies and gentlemen, Alvin Reid. Before we begin, it's been a very busy week at the Admire home. Charlotte Ann Admire was born this week. She happens to be the young grandbaby of Wendy Wiese. And our viewers at home can now see Charlotte, who's known as Charlie now.
She is known as Charlie, so I will never live this down.
No, she is precious.
Thank you.
You are blessed.
We love her so much.
Remember that commercial?
Yes, I already sent it.
You already sent it? You already
I
found
sent
it?
it.
See?
Oh, the Charlie
The
perfume?
Charlie.
Right.
Yes.
Bobby Short.
Kinda
From
here,
Danville,
kinda
Illinois.
now. Right.
Alvin's first paper.
Bobby Short was from Danville,
Bobby
Illinois.
Short was from Danville, Illinois.
Did the Wall Street Journal ever do a hit job on downtown Danville?
Yeah, it would have been pretty easy, let me tell you.
Well, this week, the Wall Street Journal, Sarah Fenske, set its sights on downtown St. Louis and said that with nobody on the sidewalk except broken glass and boarded up buildings, and according to the University of Toronto, it's reported in the Wall Street Journal this morning, front page, that fewer pedestrians have returned to downtown St. Louis than any other of the 66 major cities that were surveyed in this country. So they call this the doom loop because businesses are closing and that doesn't bring people to downtown St. Louis. When people don't come to downtown St. Louis, more businesses close. What do you think of the report by the Wall Street Journal today?
Well, I mean, far be it from me to ever accuse print journalism of being fake news. I'm in a little bit of a glass house on that, and so I'm careful with when I deploy that. And I think the story got a number of things right about downtown St. Louis, unfortunately, but I think it also got the bigger picture wrong. I think that study that they were focused on was looking at a very narrow area of downtown, and it happened to be the specific part of downtown that has been hardest hit by office workers going remote or companies pulling out of the downtown area. But there are some really vibrant parts still of downtown St. Louis. And there's, the thing about St. Louis is when one block ascends, another block sometimes has to take the hit. And so downtown West right now is very much thriving. There are other parts of downtown that are wonderful. They can't, they're turning customers away. These restaurants are so crowded. And so yes, it was true that that specific area has really struggled, but I think the report went way too far in painting all of downtown with a terrible brush and not acknowledging the energy that is right now going into trying to make things better.
I agree, and I would also say that on opening day, the Clydesdales circled the field, and they left a little, reminder that they were there, and that's pretty much what I thought about this Wall Street Journal report. It's just so easy to take shots at some other place when you're in the ivory tower of New York or Chicago or wherever you're at, which have their own problems, but yet you're going to like target St. Louis and say doom loop? I'm not buying it. We do have our problems, obviously, but once again, I mentioned earlier my oldest daughter, Bryson, and we go out with her and her husband. They love St. Louis. They love going places. We do have to wait to get in restaurants. We do things and said like, man, I have to watch kind of not what I say, but just my opinion of the place I live in now, because I think reports like that miss the mark. Come here. Be here. You don't have to live here, but you do have to physically come here and experience it for more than a day or two, staying in a hotel. And I walked on the street at noon and nobody was out there. Well, so what? So
I thought it was kind of poetic, the doom loop.
Yeah.
I think maybe we should try to use that as some kind of a motto. It sounds like a ride at Six Flags. Come to St. Louis and walk the doom loop.
Hey, wait.
I think it was accurate. I don't know anybody who says, oh, I'm just going to take Sunday afternoon and meander around downtown St. Louis.
All right, Charlie.
When you go to Forest Park or you go to
No, Forest Park is
Forest Park
fantastic,
is
but that's not downtown.
Yeah.
Well,
Downtown is dead as a doornail.
on Sunday?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so I go to downtown Cincinnati and it's thriving on Sunday afternoon.
I don't know too much about downtown Cincinnati, but downtown St. Louis, because of crime, which actually has been better in the last 6 or 7 months, but also these big buildings that are boarded up, and there's cracks in the sidewalk, and homeless individuals, and there's litter.
The Millennium Hotel.
The Millennium Hotel, the Railway Exchange, the Jefferson Arms, the AT&T building, which, in 1986 sold for $215 million. It sold this past week for $3.5. That tells you what's going on in downtown St. Louis.
I think that we have to, at this particular point, we have to be very realistic about where we are. I thought that all of the people who responded to the Wall Street Journal article, they did a very nice job. Kara Spencer said that, our national brand has we've taken a hit. Many large metropolitan areas are taking a hit right now after the pandemic. Everybody's rebuilding, but I just don't think that the right way to respond is blaming the Wall Street Journal for what they were observing. I don't think that's the right way.
What they were observing, I don't think gave an adequate picture of what St. Louis is about. I also would, Downtown, right. And then I would also say, Kara Spencer, she got a
Well,
agenda.
Understandable. She's got a horse in the race.
Right,
There's
she's got
no
a horse
doubt
in the
about
race. So
Right.
you can't ignore that. I just think that overall, when I read through that entire thing, I said, you know what? A, it didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. And B, I think they don't know what they're talking about. So.
And can I say here, when you talk about these giant, the skyscrapers that used to house office workers, that is a problem everywhere in the country. That is not a St. Louis specific problem. And when I go to downtown St. Louis on the weekend, which I do, I see dozens of kids playing at City Gardens, splashing in that splash pad. I see yoga classes happening at Keener Plaza. I think there's all sorts of things happening. They're happening at a smaller, more organic level, and we are not going to get back these skyscrapers full of lawyers wearing coats and ties. That's not what the future is for any American
Do you see a bakery downtown? Well, do you see a place where people can walk down the sidewalk and go into the tailor or the dry cleaner? Or, for that matter, look at all the restaurants that have gone out of business, from Charlie Gito's to the Panera to Kemo's to Tony's moved out, and
And we understand that they're working on it, and I thought that the mayor's office did make a terrific point. This did not happen overnight. This is not going to be corrected overnight. But they also said that they wanted St. Louis to once again be considered a cultural beacon. And from the mayor's office, I want to hear something a little more forceful, like the economic engine that it used to be, or build it back up to that level of economic vitality.
The answer is gambling.
We have it. That's the problem.
Sports book. Hey, come on. Come on.
We thought, we'll bring gambling to downtown St. Louis, and that'll be the answer.
I'm talking about
we
sports.
thought Ballpark Village would be the answer, or the city, St. Louis City SC, and they've all helped. And you're right. There are some great aspects of downtown St. Louis. The Arch, the City Museum, You mentioned the City Garden out west, the Commons, the new soccer field. But by and large, when you go to other cities in this country and around the world, there are just not people on the sidewalks. There are flat, not enough people on the sidewalks, so you feel scared when you're walking around.
But you're talking about in the middle of the daytime. Anybody who's scared to walk down the street in downtown St. Louis in the middle of the daytime, just stay where they're at. Just don't even come down here, okay? Because that makes no sense. Charlie, that makes no sense.
Okay, well, maybe Michael Neidorf was wrong in 2022 when he said there's a crime problem in downtown St. Louis, let's get on it. Or did it make no sense when Christopher Santa was shot on the grounds of the Arch, or Janae Edmondson was hit by a car? I mean, this is real crime that's taken place.
But I think the mayor has been very proactive about making sure that there are additional resources downtown to deal with the crime problem, and we are seeing that drop. I think if the Wall Street Journal had focused on the crime problem maybe 2 years ago, that part would have been 100% accurate. I'm not sure it is right now.
You know, and we have events downtown that are very successful. I mean, a matter of fact, I think it was St. Patrick's Day, there was a run, and Tino was one of the runners, and my granddaughter Evie was there.
All right.
And downtown was filled with people, and it was just a fun place to be.
And just last Saturday, 100,000 people, 40,000 people at the Battlehawks game, including me. I was in the press box. All right.
We'll get to that.
But, all right, 100,000 people come. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Where's that headline at?
Well,
but now,
where's
if
the
somebody
headline?
had got hit by a car, oh, the hose, somebody goes, right. But nobody said like, hey,
That's true,
hey,
because-
we had a weekend where 100,000 people were down here. Everybody had a good time. Everybody went home happy. No headline, nothing. Where was the Wall Street Journal last Saturday? Oh, they were writing that story that we're talking about right now.
Well, you know, in your business,
And I type like this, by the way.
in your business, you don't report when nothing happens. You don't. If the sun comes up in the east, it's not a story. But if it comes up in the west, and if someone is hit by a car, 2 visitors from Chicago attending a concert
All right.
by some guy who's running a light, or when we see stories, maybe we should move on to this one, when we see 10 cars running a red light in 30 seconds, Sarah Fenske, and your paper reports this.
We got a video of it, dash cam video, just one after another, and you just see this light is red the entire time. It's shocking.
And this is going on in downtown St. Louis. That's why groups like the Citizens for Greater Downtown St. Louis, they're concerned about building codes being enforced, traffic laws being enforced, and just picking the place up in general.
You know, I think it's a terrible thing when people run red lights, but I think in the RFT video, many of those drivers, and they were going right down Tucker, right past the old Post Dispatch building. I think that when you're in a line of cars and everybody's zipping through a light, you don't even notice the light. I mean, these were 10 cars in a row who just went through it.
Everybody relax. He doesn't drive that often. So everything's okay. Everything's okay. He walks everywhere. So
Now,
you're safe.
I realize the video was people like, okay, they're going, I'm going, all that. But if you're ever in a lot of places, city also, okay, but this whole thing where there's no car coming and the light's red. And after about 10 seconds, you say, I'm a good citizen. And after about 20 seconds, I say, I'm still a good citizen. And about 30 seconds, I say, I'm about to not be a good citizen. And after about a minute, you're through that light, okay? And that's what I'm saying, like, hey, I come this way all the time. There's no traffic. This light is red for no reason. And I think you may have caught that. Now, I don't think these 10 people that ran that light were destined to go run somebody over in the street. I really don't. I don't know. They may have been on the way to rob the 7-Eleven for all I know. But I just think that's another thing like, oh, come on now. Right. I don't think that is a signal that we're all just lawless.
If you don't follow Candy Andy from Crown Candy on Facebook, he always has footage that is just mind-boggling of the people just blowing past the stop signs and such. So it's not an isolated problem. Again, it's not unique to St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, I will defend downtown. I don't know that I can defend St. Louis drivers. Like, things in this town are a little crazy. I don't think that's a downtown problem. I do think that we need more traffic enforcement, and I think there's a lot of conversation amongst the police force, how, with the current staffing level that we have, can we prioritize this? Because it has has gotten out of control here. And I think drivers get so impatient. I can't tell you how many times I'm sitting at a red and somebody comes and passes me on the left to blow through that traffic light. That is dangerous. Bill, I know you can pull this off. Not everyone can.
No. As a matter of fact, speaking of Crown Candy and people running lights, Evie and Tito and I were at Crown Candy not too long ago when we left, and we're driving on Del Mar headed west, and twice we were stopped at a red light and the car just blew right on by us. Yeah. So, I mean, it's frightening.
Now, if we're going to look at some good news, the RFT is reporting this week that we are one of the top 20 hottest job markets. So that's good news. Yeah.
And I should add here, this was not the RFT that crunched the numbers. I don't know that people count on us for economic forecasting. Ironically, the study that we reported on came from the Wall Street Journal. So
Yeah. They give it and they take it away.
They do, yeah.
Drive-by journal.
That's the truth.
No, but if I'm correct, the article was essentially saying that during times such as these, which are, trying for a metropolitan area, that companies are looking for cities that are willing to maybe sweeten the deal or what have you. So that's good news.
Nothing wrong with that.
Bill, the Board of Aldermen in the city of St. Louis failed to enact a homeless bill. It's been kind of mulling this issue for quite some time. Last week it was a 7-7 vote with one, abstention or one person voting present. But the idea was, under this measure, to allow homeless shelters to establish themselves in communities if they could get the signatures of 33% of the residents. And some aldermen felt that was too low, that it should have been at least 50%. And yet, here we are, still talking about a homeless shelter and no homeless shelter. Do you think they should have lowered the standards?
No, I don't. And I think that the neighborhoods are the strength of St. Louis, and to put homeless shelters in a neighborhood when 70% of the people are against it, I don't think that's fair to the neighborhood. And I don't think that we do enough for homeless. I mean, our basic plan every winter is global warming. It's not going to be that cold this year. But I don't think you can put homeless shelters in residential neighborhoods when only 30% of the people say yes.
I was personally very disappointed by this vote because I thought this proposal from Alderman Alicia Saunier was a very serious proposal that grappled with a big issue in St. Louis. Our unhoused population is growing at the same time that we have fewer shelters than we had because they shut down the Reverend Larry Rice. And so there's a huge problem every winter where, as you say, we're worried that people are going to be freezing to death because there is nowhere for them to go. And so I thought this was a very serious proposal. Not only did it have this component of, yes, you needed to get a third of the neighborhood behind it, which, trust me, that is not an easy threshold to get in a St. Louis neighborhood. But beyond that, there were all sorts of provisions put in place where if you do end up opening and the neighbors have any problems, it's super easy to trigger a hearing that City Hall is going to be paying very close attention. So making it easier for someone to start up, but then if there's problems, making it so much easier to shut down. And it was unfortunate to see half of the aldermen plus one not being willing to take this vote because I don't see another solution on the horizon. What can we do to help people who are living on the streets?
Well, go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say, I like the idea of a large shelter down by the river where you're not going into residential neighborhoods and putting homeless shelters here.
Do you mean the workhouse?
Well,
I mean, that's...
Of course, I'm such a Neanderthal, Wendy. I still regret the fact that they shut the workhouse down.
But it's the medium security thing,
Right.
Oh,
Not
the
the
medium.
workhouse.
Not the workhouse.
All right, but all right, on my block, and I counted. Okay, we had 15 households. There are many mansions to, our little bitty house and, the original houses that were on the block. 15 households. If 5 approved of the shelter, I couldn't get with that, okay? And my heart's in the right place, but I'm like, if I was the last holdout, man, that's one thing, but 5 get to decide for the other 10, that math ain't mathing to me. So,
why not do some horse trading and say, okay, we would like to put this facility in your neighborhood. And just kind of like St. Louis SC picked a spot directly across the street from police headquarters, which was brilliant. And, that's helpful.
Yep.
Why not say to this neighborhood, we're going to put a little police substation there? Or perhaps you guys need a swimming pool, tennis courts, pickleball, basketball. What is it you need that we could take out of the Kroenke Fund to make this homeless shelter a little more worth your while,
And
in
this-
addition to the security?
And I just hold your booze until I've finished what I'm going to say. At this particular juncture in the city of St. Louis, that the Board of Aldermen spent this much time, or when you think of the Megan Green proposal when it came to the homeless people earlier this year, we're spending a lot of time on this particular segment of the population, and they are human beings, and they deserve to be treated this way, and with a great deal of concern. But I would rather see the Board of Aldermen doing something really substantive in terms of addressing some of the issues that we have in facing the city. Now you can boo me.
No.
That's
I won't
fine.
boo you because I agree with you. And there are other issues that I get booed on where I say the same thing. I said, we spend an inordinate amount of time on something that really does not impact.
We need to be keeping the residents and the businesses.
I like Charlie's idea.
Here.
But I would just say this. I said, hey, let's just go straight, okay. If you take the homeless shelter, your ward or your this gets this much money to which you could spend any way you want.
Any way you want.
So
I mean, Charlie, I like this proposal. I think you've just solved the problem of homelessness in St. Louis.
Good on you.
That said, I think why they're spending so much time on this issue is because at this point it is spilling over into the neighborhoods. You have neighborhoods where people are basically just camping out because they can't find a bed that will house them. And so I think that's the real problem, and that's why it has so many aldermen's attention. You also mentioned it would be great to put one down by the river. The problem is there's just so many special interests for every parcel. There was a very peaceful homeless encampment down by the river, and you could see it from the windows of a fancy hotel. And the hotel didn't like that. And so next thing you know, it gets cleared. There's no perfect space, and that's why.
I know there's no perfect space.
Is that where
Some of them were industrial?
Is that where the $1 billion new stadium was going to be? Because I was going to say, how about we put it there where no one can see it?
And when Sarah points out that the latest proposal allows people to get rid of a homeless shelter if it's a problem, I think that they'll take Charlie's idea and say, okay, we want tennis courts, a swimming pool,
And then
this,
get rid of the
and
homeless
then
shelter.
as soon as they get the homeless shelter, they'll get rid of it.
It had to be in writing. Hey, what'd you think about, speaking of downtown St. Louis and not too far from the Four Seasons, the stadium had 40,000 fans cheering on the Battlehawks. Not the NFL, but that's a heck of a crowd. In fact, it's 8,000 more people than attended the Cardinals game on Tuesday night. Wendy?
Well, maybe the Battlehawks' future looks a little brighter than the Cardinals at this. I didn't. It's early. It's early. The Cardinals are going to be absolutely fine. I have very mixed emotions about the Battlehawks because when it looked like I was one of the delusional people who believed that when we had the NFL where we wanted them, that we could turn that situation into another team for our city. Maybe the fourth or fifth time will be the charm. And I was kind of excited about the Battlehawks then because I thought, oh, they can see how excited and enthusiastic we are about this kind of football. But now that it doesn't look like we're going to get a team, and instead we have a big pile of money that we have absolutely no intention of spending anytime soon on any of the problems that we have, I'm just not that excited about the Battlehawks. And I know that that's not.
Well, okay, walking to the game from where I parked, and there were people out, and there were. It was diverse, and people were tailgating and then heading to the dome, and I was there, and watching the game, and I just didn't know how to really feel about it, other than, the people here seem to be enjoying themselves. But I just got this feeling that it was still a kind of in your face to the NFL, and I wonder how long before that bloom comes off that rose. And then also, okay, on this day, the Cardinals played, okay, and the soccer team played. I was in the press box. I think AP staffed the game. I don't think the Post staffed the game. I did see one comment I can't believe you didn't have a story like after the game. And I was thinking to myself, I don't think the Post actually staffed the game, but they're limited by reporters, sports or otherwise. And so I got to wait and see. But it was a good thing that 40,000 people were there. It was a good thing that nothing happened to the 40,000 people.
That's
As I
right.
said, my St. Louis motto is St. Louis, nothing happened to me.
But,
You know,
but to think that you're, you know, as you said, that it's like a statement. It's like, you know, against the NFL, that will show you NFL, is very much like the first wife who watched her husband drive off to the West Coast in a Corvette with his hot young secretary, thinking that he's thinking about the first wife that he left behind, and I don't think that's what this is.
I agree.
I don't think the NFL is thinking about us right now.
But I held that dream too, and I still think in my lifetime, and I'm 64, and the next eclipse I'll be 85. And so, but my plan is to make it to that. I think it could happen. I really do.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Bill McClellan, what about what's going on in Creve, Coeur, where the old Monsanto Bayer campus is being subdivided, and part of it is going to be an almost $1 billion project with hotels and apartments and stores and a new Main Street and about $86 or $90 million in tax breaks. It's not the only city doing it. Wildwood, Chesterfield, Newtown and St. Charles already went in this direction. Is that the way to go? Is it going to be successful?
It'll be a doom loop in 10 years. I mean, we'll have a region of doom loops.
Have we told you that his nickname is Sunshine? That's Sunshine.
No, I'm really not familiar too much with that area or what they're going to do. It doesn't really sound promising to me.
Well, it's really interesting because what we're trying to do in every other municipality is recreate downtown Kirkwood. So, you know, I mean, Chesterfield is doing it now. Creve Coeur is doing it. It's like it's the new huge shopping mall. Only we're going back to Main Street America. We're trying to, anyway. So it will have its shelf life like all of these things do.
I think they work. I mean, you go to Carmel, Indiana, or Cherry Creek, Colorado, and or for that matter, Wildwood or Chesterfield.
Yeah.
I mean, they're highly successful. They're a little bit faux because they're not, you know, entirely organic.
A little bit?
No, well, it's kind of like the Battlehawks. They're part of a league that's owned by one guy, right? two guys, yeah. So, and that's how this will be. Right. But, you know, it didn't work in Washington because the Hoffman family's pulling out of there, right? They were going to do something major.
That
True.
was...
All right, but also, now this one I don't know, because when you drive there, all right, it's where it is. It's not really, like I say, surrounded by any neighborhoods, and kind of the ones that do work, and Crestwood has just started theirs, and they're going to add some more restaurants and a stage and all that. But it's surrounded by people and houses. Now this one, I'm not sure. I mean, when you drive, you know, up
Lindbergh.
Lindbergh and all that, and you come to that intersection, there's really not a lot around there because obviously it was the Bayer complex, it was the Monsanto complex. So I don't know about that one because you'd have to drive there to do something as opposed to living around there. But I can't be mad at them.
But well, let me ask you on the other side of the river, Madison County, Illinois, Alvin, Reid, home of some great cities like Edwardsville and Granite City and Alton, thinking about putting on the ballot in November a measure to ask the voters if they want to secede from Governor Pritzker's Illinois.
And every time, you know, every time Texas and some of these other southern states talk about they want to secede, you know, I say like, bye, pass it. And you know, the United States of America, you say like, see ya. Right. That's what I would do. If I was Governor Pritzker, I'd say like, you know what? I hope it passes. And you know what? I am going to go to the legislature and say, let them go. And it wouldn't be 3 hours before they were begging to come back. I feel like, right.
Yeah.
And so like, this nonsense.
Have fun with those elevated highways, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so like, okay, yeah, I guess where all the water's going to go from now on. Right. Your basement is 5 foot underwater. Don't call us. Right. Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, I find this all kind of ironic. The Riverfront Times recently did a story where we interviewed a whole bunch of St. Louisans who said, you know what, we have to leave Missouri. We're going to move to Illinois. Like, this is where we agree with the politics. Now, over in Illinois, their neighbors are these people who are like, yep, we're going to secede from Illinois. It's like, we're sorting into these weird camps where so much of where you live, it is almost like your identity and the politics have to all line up. And I like that St. Louis is in Missouri to try to be sort of like a pull towards the St. Louis values on the Missouri legislature. I understand we're failing woefully in that quest, but we have to keep trying. And shouldn't these Edwardsville folk try to do the same thing in Springfield?
Well, I remember suggesting that St. Louis secede from Missouri, that we make Missouri, the river Missouri, the new boundary, and we rename St. Louis West East St. Louis. I thought there was some merit to that idea.
And we talked about on the show, as crazy as it sounded, I said, like, okay, right, when we moved back, all right, I'm Mr. Kirkwood and all that, but the whole idea was where, like I say, we're going to flip this house and all that, and we had 2 kids. We lived in Kirkwood, and all of a sudden we had 2 daughters, and we weren't moving anywhere. But I look at it now, and I said, like, nah, if it was just, my wife and I, we moved back, and all this nonsense was going on, that I probably would have considered living on the Illinois side. But I wouldn't secede.
I think if you had a vote in St. Louis City and St. Louis County this November, I think you said, would you like to become part of Illinois? I think it would win 60 to 65% because of issues like the abortion issue,
I agree.
banning books in schools.
Right.
I think it's not the sensibility of the city and the county.
I agree. I do agree with that.
Well,
I think it's surprising that things have, as you said, have gotten so weird because things are so normal everywhere else in the country.
Hey, Wendy, what about Sam Page, County Executive, St. Louis County? He, along with Stephanie Leon Streeter, the Streets Director, recently took the media on a tour of the Lawrence Roos County building. That's, of course, on Central in downtown Clayton, and they pointed out all the problems with this building that they've known about since 2015 at the earliest. They have a 2028 deadline from the city of Clayton to fix their fire extinguishers, which could cost about $175 million. Otherwise, people will have to move out. So now Sam Page would like to put on the ballot in November a tax increase so that the voters in the county would approve a $550 or $650 million new building. Now, we do have Caleres down the street, which is going to be empty, and we have other buildings in downtown Clayton that have office space. Do you think the county would be wiser just to fill the existing vacant space in Clayton?
When do politicians ever do the wise thing, Charlie? I mean, I would love to think that they would take advantage and repurpose some of these old buildings and that kind of thing, but that's just not going to happen. And he wants $99,000 or $100,000 to employ Michael Kelly to educate the citizenry about why this is so important. And I long for the days, do you remember when educating ourselves, when that was our job, right? That we didn't need someone to be hired or put on the tax, on the dole to explain how important these things were to us? Because that's a cottage industry that I think everybody would maybe like to be a part of.
Well, McClellan Reid would have done it for 80.
You two would have done it
we
for
did it for 80, right?
Yeah.
And we'll tell Sam that tonight.
Right, tonight. Sam, hey, you know, I could march some people through a building that's falling down around them and say, like, hey, we got to do better. Actually, you know, I do think that if you work for a city, if you work for a county, I know they're different buildings, but they're close to each other. I'm more comfortable with everybody who's working in the same building. I still feel, and I guess I'm a dinosaur, I know people work from home and all that, but I still feel like there is more production when people are all in the same place at the same time. And thus, I'm not quite ready to, fill in the little yes box on that tax, but at the same time, I'm closer to that than no. Because I think they need a new building. It's time for a new building. Let's pay for a new building.
But here's a question. If they let the current building run down and they didn't perform the necessary maintenance for years and just let it slide. Even though they were warned 10 years ago, this needs to be repaired, this needs to be repaired. Why are you comfortable building a new building knowing that they may ignore the maintenance in the new one?
That's
Well,
a good point.
I blame Steve Stinger.
Yeah.
Never mind anybody else. I think that's where it all fell apart. I think it needed a new paint job before he came in, and then the roof started falling in. Now, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, let those of us in a house that said like, hey, we got to get that fixed. You know, maybe if we had like looked up there every day, we'd say like, hey, that's kind of looking right, you know.
Speaking of money, Sarah Fenske, St. Louis City SC has a deal for its customers for $79.99. You can buy a tumbler and use that tumbler every time you enter the stadium for a game. I think there's 22 games, and fill it up with water or soda. Is that a good deal?
Well, I mean, if you listen to the RFT readers, they're telling you no. They are very wound up about this deal. You know, apparently you're not allowed to just bring any tumbler in if you're planning to use it for water. And people are like, hey, I'm trying to be eco-friendly. I don't want to like carry around plastic stuff. I'm just going to have this cup and bring it with me and fill it up. And City SC has said, no, you can't do that unless you pay us $80 and buy the one with our logo on it. I get that the Yetis are very fancy and everyone needs to have a Yeti. My little niece, this is like all she wanted for Christmas. To me, that seems crazy. $80?
Okay.
It does seem crazy until you realize that like a bottle of water today costs $10. So, I mean, honestly, you know, what we pay today for coffee is our grandparents would have just fallen over.
But they could have bought like Brazil for what we paid for a cup of coffee.
Exactly.
All right. Listen, sports teams. All right. Once you're in that stadium, it's a hustle. Okay, and you just have to know, you just have to just basically say like, I'm either in or I'm out. You're right on the cost of a water or the cost of a soda. If you're going to go to 22 games, you actually get your money's worth.
You are going to get your money's worth.
Now, here's what I wonder. Is the 2024 Tumbler still good in 2025? And I got a sneaky suspicion I know what the answer is.
If it was going to be good, now it won't be.
You just gave them an idea.
I gave them an idea.
Well, here's the thing, though. If you fill it up with soda, I mean, it's probably a pretty good deal. But the water, not so much, although the team did say in its press release that they're going to have 9 water stations with compostable, I guess, cups, so that you don't have to have a tumbler to get water in the blazing heat.
That is nice, but how much do you want to bet you're going to get like this little like janky looking cup and like, you know, it doesn't like fit in the cup holder and you're going to be like,
with like
I need
a
the Yeti.
liner. Or
Yeah.
Pretty much little like the thing. All right, going back to the last Saturday, Cardinals won a thrilling game. Okay, the Battlehawks won a thrilling game. The people with the $80 tumblers got a 0-0 tie. they better not market that based on last Saturday.
Wendy, this week, the whole nation, well, I shouldn't say the whole nation, but news operations coast to coast were covering the execution of Brian Dorsey, who was put to death for the 2006 murder of his cousin and her husband. The case went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court rejected it. What was kind of strange about this case is that his lawyers were able to find what they described as 70 corrections officials who knew Mr. Dorsey and said that he had been rehabilitated, that he was a model prisoner, caused no more problems, was contrite, and was ready to live the new life, and was living a new life. But the law said nothing about that, and he was put to death. Do you think his life should have been spared?
Oh, I hate to even be put in that situation. I think that it's a tragedy all the way around. And Congresswoman Cori Bush, said that as many other people did, that he was in a state of psychosis because of the drugs that he had consumed. But 2 people lost their lives, and it's hard to say, oh, it's kind of like, it's like the drunk driver who, but when he's sober, he's a super nice guy. He just hit the school bus. It's an awful situation, and I'm not sure what the resolution is. But I think, like everybody in this audience, everybody around, the nation and probably beyond, it's a case-by-case basis when it comes to the death penalty. And this was chilling.
It's so difficult because you almost never execute the person you convicted.
Exactly.
Because, it's 10, 15, sometimes 20 years down the road, and people change. I used to be in favor of the death penalty and was a state's witness at 3 different executions, but it seems to be so unevenly applied that, I'm now more of just life without parole.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you, Bill. And the more that I have read about issues surrounding capital punishment, the more it seems that we don't execute that cold-blooded killer who plots and who ends up shooting 20 people. It's often somebody who's mentally ill. Disproportionately, it's people who have been in foster care as kids, so people who've had like the most terrible upbringings, and they do like this awful thing. I mean, in this case, nobody's arguing that Brian Dorsey didn't do it, and yet it's like, do we believe that you can find redemption or be better than the worst thing you've ever done in your life? I want to believe that we can, and as a society, to not give somebody like Brian Dorsey a chance to live out the rest of his days in prison, I'm disappointed in Governor Parson on this, and I wish he would have just said, you stay in prison, but you live.
I'm the opposite of Bill. I was, as a younger person, a long time ago, I was adamantly against the death penalty, and it's not like I did this 180, but I just came to the understanding that this is not about anything other than society really wants vengeance on you. And I came to grips with that. In the case of at the time, a very young man who killed Kirkwood police officer Kevin Johnson, I wrote a column shortly after that, knew none of the facts behind it, but I said, ultimately, the state is going to take his life. I had no idea what led up to that and all that. And once we found out, if somebody was not going to maybe be put to death, that was a case, and that was being made throughout the state and all over the country. However, he was put to death. The same with this, man too. I just think, as Wendy said, like, if you find yourself in a situation, it is because you murdered somebody. And I just can't look away or say that, yes, they became a better person and they should just be able to live out their life in prison. I still come back to, unfortunately, you're being judged on the act that you did at that time. And, I understand it. That's all I'm saying.
I understand it too, but a lot of states that don't have the death penalty and a lot of countries that don't, they have a lot fewer murders than our crazy state. And except for the money, I understand when you're giving a guy 3 squares for the rest of his life, that costs the taxpayers money. But I don't see what the benefit is of killing the fella, because we have seen in other countries where they don't have the death penalty and people seem to be behaving better.
But I think they would behave better if they had a death penalty.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Bill McClellan, you were once the commencement speaker at St. Louis University, were you not?
I was.
Well, following that tradition of finding a affable hunk to deliver the commencement address, St. Louis University has chosen John Hamm, the actor from St. Louis, to deliver the commencement address.
I see that.
And then Washington University has picked actress Jennifer Coolidge from a lot of movies, including The White Lotus. Your opinions on these choices?
Well, first of all, when I was the commencement speaker, it was because the guy that they had was about to get indicted, and I wrote a column about the Jesuits, and Father Biondi called me and said, "If you know so much, why don't you do it?" and so I did, and they gave me an honorary bachelor's degree because I didn't have a degree, and Father Biondi threw in an honorary MBA. So, but I think that for St. Louis University, which is a local, St. Louis institution, John Hamm, who's a local guy, is a wonderful choice. For Washington University, which is a national institution, and these are such troubling times. I mean, democracy, the right doesn't trust elections, the left doesn't trust the Supreme Court, everything is crumbling. I thought they should have had a more serious person than the actress from Blue Lotus or whatever it is. And, it's almost like if you were in Germany in 1935 and the university decided, well, let's have Sally Bowles do it. Sally was the singer in Cabaret, from Christopher Isherwood's Berlin Diaries. It just seemed like timidity, that they didn't want to go in those troubled waters. And even they could have gone with like Sam Altman, from Artificial Intelligence. Sam grew up like 2 blocks from WashU. I mean, maybe that's why they didn't go with him, but I thought getting the person from Blue Lotus,
White Lotus.
White Lotus.
But wait,
I thought getting the woman from White Lotus should probably be very clever, but I would have thought serious times maybe call for a more serious person.
Both of them, what are they going to tell these graduates? They're like, go to Hollywood, get like a little, try out for a play, get hired, make $1 bazillion being an actor. Hey, go for it. Never mind that stinking electrical engineering degree you're going to get and all that. What is either one of them going to say?
Yeah.
Hey,
I mean, they're at least entertaining, though. I mean, who among us even remembers our commencement speaker? If we'd had John Hamm, you do. Was it
George Herbert Walker Bush?
Oh.
Wow.
But I will say,
If you're going to drop names.
no, but it rained.
At college or high school?
College.
All right.
Yeah. No, but I will say, last year at Fordham, where my daughter was graduated, Stevie Wonder gave the best commencement address possible.
Okay.
And it was tremendous. He was an entertainer, and it was very inspiring.
And I believe that you need to educate yourself about Jennifer Coolidge and her star-making turn as the manicurist in Legally Blonde.
Yes.
I should say that I enjoyed White Lotus, and I called it Blue Lotus, and I thought
You lie.
both seasons were good.
You lie.
No,
he watched it.
Mary will
He
tell
watched
you. We
it.
watched it.
Right. Anyway, she's
All right.
doing some commercials right now,
Oh,
right?
she's hilarious.
All right.
And that's might be just what Washington University thinks the world needs right now, is a little laughter.
I think a little
Perhaps
humor is
so.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the time for your questions, and we have a couple of microphones in the audience. We're going to start with the one and only Bill from Rock Hill. Hey, Bill Hager.
Hey, Bill.
Evening. This thing is, there we go. Earlier you were talking about the problems of downtown. About, roughly 54 years ago, the last bar on Gaslight Square, O'Connell's, moved off. And they often said a large problem, what killed the square was a perception. People perceived the area to be unsafe, and what had once been one of the most vibrant areas in the country died. Do you think a similar problem is happening downtown, that we're dealing with a problem of perception, and that people like the Wall Street Journal, that's what they see when they look at us?
I'll take that, Bill. I think that we're still living with the aftermath of Michael Brown. I think that was 10 years ago this August, and that is still reverberating. And then was it just months later on the University of Missouri campus in Columbia, there was quite a bit of uproar. I think those things leave an impression. And then when a young D1 athlete loses both legs, these are headlines that capture people's imagination, rightly or wrongly. And I think, as we said earlier, it's a cyclical issue. Time will heal this particular issue, but it's not going to go away overnight.
I think there's hope, because before I got to St. Louis, I'm told that Forest Park was kind of a dicey place, and a lot of people avoided it. Today, Forest Park is completely approachable and inviting. It's beautiful. It's got a city public-private partnership where it maintains. I mean, we went in there a couple weeks ago looking for litter. We could barely find any. So hats off to Forest Park Forever, the city's Parks Department. And I think we can do something like that in downtown St. Louis, if there's the will. Who's next? Thank you for your question.
And to all of you, you guys are great. Keep on going. Anyway.
We want to.
Anyway. But all we want to know is, all the topics you have, each program, do you contribute to it? Did the provocateur do it? Or you just come in cold turkey hoping you know what's going to be talked about?
Well, some weeks I will look at the show and think to myself, did I just walk in off the street? What was I talking about? No, not to speak for Charlie or anything. Throughout the week, we trade emails, and then Charlie will send one out with topics that we may talk about. And as you had figured out probably, we have to have some disagreement. And thus, if there's no disagreement, sometimes we would say, why didn't you talk about this? Or why didn't you talk about that? And they said, well, we're kind of in agreement. So what's the point of that?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
right. And we have less disagreement now that Ray's not on this show.
It's probably pretty obvious, but I don't know a lot of what we're talking about. Often I go home after the show in the old days, and Mary would say to me, why do you argue with Ray so much?
I got to give a shout out to Ray. He really was our MVP for many weeks. Because, you see, Alvin's right. We don't broach a topic unless we have two sides of the issue. There has to be some disagreement. Not only is it fair, but also conflict is the heart of drama. It's a rule that Martin Dugan brilliantly came up with.
Yes.
But Ray would often take those positions that no one else would, like, hey, Kim Gardner's a great circuit attorney. But, you know, he was a founder of the show and certainly added so much to this broadcast.
And we love him dearly.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's next?
Hi there. You know, the industry of travel is getting so busy right now. They're not allowing people into Yellowstone or Yosemite just because it's so busy. Venice, other places. I just wanted to say that out of St. Louis, within a day's drive, you can get to Door County or the beautiful museums of Chicago, down south to Hot Springs, and on and on. Charlie and I both, not at the same time, but almost, went down to Key West. Boy, what a wonderful place. So it isn't all the major places that we see on television that are out there. We do have one of the best highway systems in the world. Get in your car and go see the United States.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's all true. And that's Gig Gwynn, formerly of Gwynn Travel, who has been to 144 countries on planet Earth.
There you go. Yeah. And hey, who went and saw the eclipse any place other than St. Louis? Where'd you go? I went to Mount Vernon, and it was cool. It was worth it. Totality.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I went there for a COVID shot. In the early days, you couldn't.
I know. I thought you went to Moline Acres.
Inside joke. Okay, do we have another question from the audience? We do. In the front row.
Hi. I was just curious, when is Ray going to get his framed photo on the mantle?
Wait, we're going to get it. All right.
When does Ray get his photo on the mantle?
Well, if you look at who's up there, we hope it's very, very, very long time from now.
Well, now there is Bernie Federico and Ozzie Smith.
Is Bernie? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Maybe on the first Wednesday in November.
All right, there we go.
Okay, another question. There we go. Use this space for notes.
Thank you. So one of the panelists defended the recent homeless bill that was defeated because it would allow for a quick and effective response in the event of problems. Can any of the panelists name anything that the city has done that has been quick, focused, and effective?
Would you repeat the question? What are you saying? Does the city do anything that's effective?
Quick, focused, and
Quick,
effective.
focused, and effective.
Well, I do think the parks are going really well. I think they have a great parks director, Greg Hayes. I'd like to give him a shout out. He's done tremendous work. I think the fire department also is pretty buttoned down. And I think, everything's a work in progress, so we'll see how the other departments are doing.
Same could be said for where I live. We laugh in Kirkwood. Quick, focused, and effective. Yeah, okay. Not down there at City Hall, but yeah.
And I will say, as the city resident on this panel, I got to throw that in. Part of what I really like about living in St. Louis is how the neighbors will come together with solutions that are sometimes outside of City Hall. And we saw that with the quote-unquote murder shell that was recently shut down. You see all over the place, neighbors are raising money to fix problems. They're finding ways to tackle things that are troublesome in their own neighborhoods, and I love it. And so I don't necessarily always trust all of our elected officials, but I do ultimately trust the people of St. Louis.
Amen. That's so true.
That's a good point.
We actually have 3 cleanup efforts in April. One at the South City Y, another one in the Ellendale, Clifton Heights neighborhood, the other one in Old North St. Louis, and the people are coming out in droves to pick up litter.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's cool.
So
That's cool.
if you'd like to join us, it's cwbrennan@kmworks.com.
Yeah, right.
Okay, 1 minute to go. Does anyone have a brief final comment? Oh, front row.
How do you survive in St. Louis being a Cubs fan?
The question is, how, Bill, do you survive in St. Louis being a Cubs fan?
Well, the Cubs had an 8-0 lead the other day, Evie, and I went to bed and I woke up and they'd lost 9-8. But I thought it wasn't fair to make the Cubs play on the day of a solar eclipse. Bad things happen. So,
Or a day
and I should throw it back to you, Evie. How do you survive being a Giants fan?
Well, that's all the time we have for this discussion. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support. See you next year.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.